Hello, everyone. This week's episode of Meet the Masculine, I have the incredible Jeddy Azuma here. And I had to pause because internally it was like incredible isn't good enough to describe to describe the man that I have present for us today. He is such an inspiration to me, not just as a man, but also as a husband and as a father, and knowing and having the ability to experience him and his wife intimately on a personal level. They have been such a source of inspiration and love and guidance and hope for me. So Jeddy, thank you for being on, and please let people know who you be in this world and where they can find you.
Oh, well, thank you for that. Truly honored by your introduction. I really received that. Who I be in this world. I am a man whose mission is out to awaken and invigorate the masculine in other men around me so that we can be of great service to the world in all the ways that we're capable of. So there's a lot of ways in which I do that. Is now the time to mention that?
Yes, let people know, like if they want to look you up and cyber stalk you right now and your work that you do, like let them know where they can do that.
Oh yeah, all cyber stalkers welcome. I guess I should pump the brakes on that.
Yeah, like the light base, the love base, right?
The love base, cyber stalking, very very light from a distance. Yeah, let's do that. But if you want to cyber stalk me, everything I do comes through on my Facebook portal. So Jeddy Azuma, look me up on Facebook. Connect. I'm always open to connecting on Messenger with whoever has questions or wants to just reach out. My two big projects right now are the Rising Man podcast, which is a podcast for men where we share compelling stories of men who have journeyed from boyhood into manhood and are figuring out what it means to be a man in the world. So there's a lot of really juicy stuff on there. You can check that out on Apple, iTunes, all the podcast outlets, and also at therisingmanpodcast.com. And then for more of my in-person work, the one I'm really excited right now is a 3-day wilderness immersion that I'm calling Elements. That's going to happen the end of October 26th through 28th here in Southern California. It's going to be an incredible experience just for men, getting out into the wilderness, challenging ourselves in the elements underneath the stars with a team of men from all different types of backgrounds. So that's going to be really powerful. Any men who are interested, head over to rise.jeddyazuma.com/elements and sign up today. Yeah, those are the big ones right now.
Yes. I love that you brought this forward, that this program is called Elements, because when I was preparing for this morning, I do my best to attune to people and really feel into their essence and like their light. And when I was thinking about you, I was like, when I feel Jeddy, I feel the earth. Like I really feel the earth and I feel the ancestors. Like I feel like there is ancient wisdom that moves through you, whereas like there's people that I've experienced that are like they know the books, right, and they know the present day 2018 knowledge, which is so important and awesome, and there's this intangible magic about the wisdom that you bring through your channel and through your beingness. So I think that program sounds amazing. My first question is, how would you define a conscious man?
This is tough for me, and I'll be fully transparent. I don't like the word conscious. I think the word conscious is thrown around a lot to try and describe something that everyone has a different opinion about. So for me, what conscious means is just somebody who is aware of who they are at a deep essential level. And when I say that, I mean, I know what my life is for. I'm clear on the direction that I'm heading in my life. I know my values. I know what I can offer to a partner, to my family, to my brothers, my sisters, my community, my coworkers, my clients. I'm clear on who I am and what I bring to the table. And so I think a lot of folks, when we in this conversation of conscious, unconscious, we're all describing something that's kind of like that. It's an awareness of self. And then beyond that, it's also an awareness that my life is about more than just me and what I want. And I also consider that to be the journey from boy to man, is when we become conscious that my life is not about just serving myself and my interests and needs, but taking care of myself so that I can be of great service to everyone and everything else around me.
Yes. There was a word or a phrase. You said, I know my values. I know where I'm going. how did you arrive at that knowing?
Oof, that's a long story. The short Cliff Notes version of it is I stopped seeking answers and I followed the questions. So I followed my curiosity. The first place I got curious about was within myself. I got curious about who am I really and what am I here to do? You know, at a time in my life when I was in my early 20s, I was starting to feel the weight of the world and understanding that there's a lot of what at that time I considered to be darkness. There's a lot of darkness in the world, and it felt overwhelming. And I didn't know what to do about that because I wanted the world to be great. I knew I wanted to contribute in a positive way. And yet it seemed in like an enormous responsibility. It seemed like an enormous task for a 23-year-old. So I did what most 20-year-old folks do that don't know how to deal and handle with this enormity when we don't have mentorship, is I started numbing myself. I numbed myself with marijuana, cigarettes, going out and partying and having a good time, and held on to that as long as I could before I couldn't stop looking at myself. I couldn't avoid looking at myself in the mirror anymore. It was just like, okay, time to face off with who I am. And so the curiosity started to sink in. Question that came up was, is this it? Is this who I'm going to be for the rest of my life? Is this who I'm going to be? I couldn't actually imagine my life past the age of about 26. And I was 23 at the time, and I couldn't imagine what I had zero perspective. It was like a blank pages in a book. And it actually kind of scared me because I thought to myself, does that mean that I'm going to die? Like, am I having some sort of premonition that my life is going to end early, and that, you know, it kind of messed me up. I thought maybe I'm like the Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin. You make it to 27, then you die and burn out. And, you know, I realized that it was just, I had no vision. I had no clarity of purpose. I knew that I wanted to be of service. That had been the same since the earliest memories I have. But there was nothing tangible about it. There wasn't a snapshot in my mind of what I would be doing with my life. So the way I got to understanding myself, knowing my values, my virtues, how I give back to this world, was by starting to ask questions and by opening myself up to the possibility that it could be anything. Because here I am, I had just finished 6 years of college. I had gotten a doctorate degree in physical therapy, started working for a year, and I was looking at myself saying, there's no way I can do this forever. There's no way I can even do this for more than a couple of years. This is not what I'm here to do. And that was terrifying too. So I had to be open to anything. I guess it's also a surrender to what's out there waiting for me. So started asking questions, left all the certainty of my community, my home environment, to travel and see how the world would receive me. Let the world mirror back to me who I am, instead of trying to come up with this mental construct of who I think I am.
Yeah. Oh, you brought up something so beautiful there. And that is, or at least what I heard was, you cultivated your vision facing forward. So a lot of people will cultivate their vision based on where they've been. And what you just shared was, I went out into the world and looked at what was reflected back to me. Like, looked at what's possible based on what I see and what I can feel, rather than moving into visioning based on what we already have conquered or walked through, or the paradigms that have been created up to that point.
Yeah.
Where was the first place you went?
The first place that I went when I traveled? Well, I left New York City a week after my 25th birthday. I got on a plane and I met up with some old college buddies, and we went into Yosemite for a week. I literally got picked up from the airport with all of my gear, and we went right into the wilderness. So very, very appropriate given the trajectory of the rest of my life. I spent a week out in some of the most beautiful wilderness that we have here in California. And then there was a whole series of experiences and opportunities that arose from there. But I just kept following the breadcrumbs. I had very little agenda for when I went on this journey. And I definitely recommend something like this for anyone who feels called to it, because it meant that I had to respond to what was presented to me. I didn't know this at the time. I was 25 years old. I was growing a Fu Manchu mustache. People were calling me Captain Jack Sparrow because I had my hair wrapped up, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know, but I knew from here, like from my gut.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And so I really encourage people to put yourself in a scenario where you have to respond to what presents itself, and you have the freedom to follow the breadcrumbs, because a lot of us get stuck in the rigors of a certain life, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. That I'm going to be going to work on Monday. I'm going to be having a weekend on Friday. I'm going to be paying my bills on the first of the month. All these different certainties, mm-hmm. and we eliminate all of the possibility that wants to speak to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that you said from here, like this area here.
Yeah, right here.
That's right. Yeah, it's like I really resonate with that, because I feel like my soul speaks from there. The knowing comes through this space. It has nothing to do with up here. It's mm-hmm. all here. And there's a question that keeps coming up for me, and it's around how you learned to hear your soul's wisdom.
That's a big question. I think honestly, it's a journey. It's been a journey for me, and it still is, of deciphering the different voices that occur in my whole body. Not just the voices in my head, but the voices that occur from this soul space in our belly and this heart space in my chest. Mm-hmm. All I can say is that it's been taking every opportunity that presents itself to listen to what are the different voices that are occurring, and where do they seem to be coming from, and recognizing that there's patterns. So I have a pattern for my logic, for the way my brain functions and operates. It always seems to come from a similar voice. It sounds a lot like my father's voice. Mm-hmm. So that's how I can recognize it. Like when I hear a voice within me that sounds a lot like my dad, I'm like, okay, that's coming from upstairs somewhere here.
Yeah.
But when I hear a voice in me, it's actually the illogical voice. It's the voice in me that sounds so certain that it's time to leave New York City and go on an indefinite journey across the country for no particular reason or purpose, but other than to present yourself to the world. That voice was undeniable. To me, that's my soul voice. That's the voice, because I didn't have a choice.
Yes.
It was, you must do this. Regardless of everything else. I was defying. I had just spent 6 years in college. I had worked for a year and a half with the support of my parents, helping me get my degree, helping me to set myself up for my life the way they saw it. And then I was saying, hey guys, sorry, I'm going to quit my job and go travel for a little while. That was a confrontation, and leaving my amazing community of friends, men and women who were in their mid-20s, figuring this out. We were running the city. We had such a big community, and I was saying, sorry guys, I got to go. None of it made sense. My little brother was about to have his daughter. She was born 2 weeks after I left. So I was about to be an uncle for the first time. And yet that voice was, I got to go. I got to go. So that's the best way I can explain it, is it's an undeniable, unshakable voice. Not to say that because we can absolutely conceal it or turn away from it, but it keeps repeating itself. So I think that's the soul voice, is it doesn't let go of something. Whether it takes you 10 minutes or 10 years to finally listen and tune into it, it'll work on repeat until you listen and respond.
Yes. Oh, that's amazing. I love that you went there. Thank you for going there. Because this is the first time in the interview series, maybe the second time, that intuition has been presenced, and how you be with intuition. And I really appreciate that you brought up the numbing in the beginning, because I always say that it takes a lot of energy to suffocate the soul. And so much of the numbing that happens is us trying to push that soul voice down, because at least in my experience, my soul will haunt me. Like I won't be able to sleep until I honor that wisdom. And especially as I've become more aware or conscious, it's like that lag time, right? Like those few years, it's no longer a few years, like honor in the next 2 hours, like, let's go, you know.
Yes.
It's become this relationship, this dance. And I'm so grateful that you presence that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a gift, in
Mm.
my opinion.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're bringing this up too, because those, you know, marijuana, tobacco, these are sacred medicines where I come from.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even when you go and you reduce what heroin is, if you kind of like, these are medicines, these are plant-based, naturally occurring medicines that humans have figured out how to concentrate into ridiculous concentrations of these medicines and to pump ourselves full of them in order to numb ourselves, in order to diminish that internal voice. Maybe not specifically to diminish that internal voice, but that's definitely one of the consequences.
Yes.
And so we have this misinterpretation of what these medicines are there for and how we use them. But I'm glad that it emerged in this conversation that those are ways, and it takes something of that magnitude to diminish those voices. It really does, because those voices are powerful. Mm-hmm. It's part of what is meant to emerge and to guide us as we come of age, as we come to a place where we have some life experience, we have some tools and resources to influence people and have a great impact on the world. Mm-hmm. And yet if we can't tune into that voice, or it's so contrary to everything we thought we were supposed to become, that we have to tune it out in order to just keep functioning in the 9 to 5. Mm-hmm. So mm-hmm. I think we're dusting up something here that is really powerful.
Yes. Well, that was something major that I see in men and women, and my passion for it is due to, or was birthed from, my experience with numbing and realizing, just like you said right now, where it takes a lot, like it takes a ton of those medicines in concentrated form. I mean, in my journey, it was like I had the alcohol, I had the antidepressants, I had the anti-anxiety medications, I had the party drugs. I mean, like the food, like there was nothing else for me to pull at one point. It was like, and it was that moment where you shared earlier, where you like looked at yourself. It was like, is this it? Mm-hmm. I for sure had that moment of looking in the mirror, like, who is that? Mm-hmm. Where did she come from? Because that's not me. Mm-hmm. The truth of who I am.
Yeah. And I feel called to pause for a moment and just speak directly to those men, women, children who may see this at some point in time, who are feeling the enormity, who are feeling the pain. It's a painful place. And both Katie and I have been there. Mm-hmm. We've been in that place where you don't know how else to function. You don't know how else to survive, because you've created this incredible paradox in your life where there's one voice that's telling you something so illogical, so nonsensical that you can't deny. And yet there's all these other voices. We can call it society. We can call it our parents. We can call it our culture, our traditions, our customs, whatever it is, that conflict with one another. Mm-hmm. And depending on what we choose, we always all have a choice. We always have a choice to listen to the voice of truth within us or the voice of everyone else's truths. And we can take that on ourselves. So I just want to say for a moment to those of you who are still feeling conflicted by those two voices, and you see Katie and I here speaking and seemingly so joyful, we know what it's like. We know what it's like to be in that journey. And that's why we do what we do. Yes. Because it wasn't like I found it myself. Mm-hmm. You know, I said I didn't know why I was going on that journey, but what my soul was calling for was mentorship. What my soul was calling for was a circle of elder men who could mirror back to me who I am, and also give me some guidance as I was developing my values as a man, as I was deciding what mattered to me on my journey as a man. And I'm sure you've got a very similar story that maybe the people listening have already heard of. But mm-hmm. we don't do it by ourselves. And that's why folks like you and I do what we do, because we know that you can't do it by yourself. Mm-hmm. You just can't. You need the mirror. One of my elders told me once that your medicine doesn't exist without community, because without community, your medicine can't be seen and there's no one to receive it.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that reverberated through every cell of my body right now. That Your medicine does not exist without community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I just received this flash of how in those darker times, when there was the numbing, there was also the hiding,
Mm-hmm.
the shame that kept me out of community because I had built this kind of fortress. And so stepping out and it was, I love that you said my soul was guiding me to mentorship, because in that moment when I had that mirror moment, and I said, this is not me. That was when I hired my first coach.
Mm-hmm.
The book found me, that was supposed to guide me. And I turned over the book and I was like, I got to find this woman. And I did.
Mm-hmm.
And it broke everything open.
Mm-hmm.
When you began to cultivate that community of people, what did that look like for you?
Well, let me back up for a second and say I have been a man of community ever since I was 9 years old. It was actually when I discovered community. My mom was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer back when cancer was still a relatively new word for people. And she was so sick, and my dad was working so hard to pay for all of our family's needs and her care and taking care of her. Sometimes she was hospitalized for weeks at a time. And my best friends at that time, and our parents, they didn't really know each other well yet, but they all circled around my family at that time. And I was sleeping over a different friend's house during weekdays, which was, at least where I grew up, that just, you don't do that.
Yeah.
But I was sleeping over at a different friend's house every day of the week so that they could, pass me around, and that my parents didn't have to worry about me. And I remember the celebration when my mom was deemed to be cancer-free. All of these friends, all this community in a really small town circled around us. And I get emotional thinking about it because yeah.
The tears are here.
Yeah. Because it's beautiful what we do for each other intuitively, instinctually. So I've always had that context for community, and that carried forward into my college years when I found the community of brothers and sisters who I consider my soul family. My best friends in the world right now, where our vision is to raise our children together. And we've had that vision since we were 17. So community has always been with me in one form or fashion, but the community that we're talking about, the community of mentorship, the community of 3 generations, sometimes 4 generations, because a community of 1 generation is only as powerful as it can be with this one singular view. But when we start bringing elders, and then we start bringing youngers, and then obviously the adults in the middle into the mix, then you're really bridging the gaps. That's when you're really creating a legacy of wisdom to be passed forward and passed back. So that really, what that looked like for me was arriving in California 4 months into my journey from New York City, and finding myself in a community where I was half the age or more than everyone I was spending time with. I was hanging out with a bunch of 50, 60, and 70-year-olds, and I was loving it because I'm like, these guys are on my level. Like, I want to hear what you have to say. What has life been like for you? What is the journey like as a father? Because I know I want to be one, but I have no idea where to start. And my friends that I've been hanging out with have no idea either. It's like the blind leading the blind back in New York. So it looked like a lot of mentorship for me. That's what I was lacking. I didn't have, and not to say there weren't any men in my life back in New York, but not the type of men that I needed, and not as many men as I needed at that time. So it was a lot of mentorship, really, and men and women. I was welcomed into. I for the first month that I lived here, month and a half, I lived in 2 of my, good friends, now brothers, mentors, in their house and in their backyard. So that was community for me, was, being like the prodigal son that found a place to land somewhere.
Yes. Yeah. So good. Yeah. And I love that you were able to allow yourself to be open to the possibilities of that. One of the fears that I walked through was kind of this conditioning around doing it solo, like the independent woman, like the success doesn't count if you got help on the way. Which is a twisted, like, I even think about that now and I'm like, wow, that's a really twisted way to live, to try to live fully. Uh, and and I've also now experienced that level of community and experienced that level of love and experienced people, one of them being your wife this week, who hopped on the phone with me and was able to call me forward and like remind me, reflect back to me, wait, this is who you are, you know, this is what you're about. And that, especially when I look at my son, you know, I'm thinking now about who can I expose him to? Whose medicine does he get to dance with? You know, and how do I foster this now? Even though he's 7, like, how do I start this now? Because when you say at 9, it started for you, it's incredible.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the children. They kind of guide us too. They lead us towards where we need to go. I know that my son, my little nieces and nephews running around, they've done that themselves. They've called in, either deliberately out loud. You know, it's amazing to me the things that children can say and that they can conjure up, or just energetically, you know, pulling people together. When my wife and I had our son, we had, like I mentioned before, we had talked, my really close friends, we had talked about raising kids together. When we were pregnant, we said, hey, this first child is coming and we need some support. And so just him being in existence set forth in motion my dearest brother in the world and his partner to move from New York to Ojai, California to live with us. Wow. And that started the migration of so many of our friends. I think 12 people have moved from New York City to California now because of and obviously now more babies are popping up and people are starting to come closer and closer together. And, you know, so they have a wisdom too. And I think it's a balance, right? It's in parenting, it's how much do we think we know about what they need, and then what are they asking for energetically and outwardly.
Yeah. How has fatherhood been for you?
It's been similar to marriage, and maybe just a slight notch below marriage, because especially being a father to a son, it's been the single greatest transformative experience of my life. Because in close, intimate relationships, whether it's being a parent or being a partner in a marriage or a committed relationship, it brings all your shit to the surface. There's no other way to put it. You know, there's no way to be in relationship like that without those things emerging. And a lot of people spend, again, like we said before, a lot of energy, a lot of effort to try and make it look nice or to push aside the dirt that wants to be revealed. But the type of people that myself, my wife, my son are, we don't do that. We let everything boil to the surface and face it head on, as uncomfortable as it might be, and take it. And my son is the definition of like Mowgli. He is a wild boy. He is a free spirit. He's determined. He's going to be one of those dudes that leaves the house when he's 16, and we probably won't see him for like 4 to 10 years. Hope not, and my wife definitely hopes not. But I keep saying, I know it. I know he's going to go and venture out. So transparency, right? Right now, I'm grappling with how do I lead and father a boy like that. And I'm grateful that I have a circle of men. We get together every 2 weeks, and I brought this question to them. And most of the men in this circle are also fathers. I said, I don't know how to discipline my boy. Like, that's just real. Like, I don't know how to discipline this boy that I have right in front of me. And one of the things one of the men said to me is, a highly spirited boy needs really strong, sturdy walls. And that's not confines. That's not prison. We're talking about they need room to run. But when they run into a wall, it's got to be you. Because if that wall's not there, then they're going to run into the world at some point. And the world is not as forgiving when it brings consequences onto a little boy. And so this is what I'm, really presently, like just within the past couple of weeks, is what I'm dealing with is how can I take on that identity as the strong, sturdy wall that he needs so that I can present consequences to him before the world does.
Yes.
The world isn't going to take care of him the way that his father can. And, so yeah, that's what comes up when you ask me the question, how has fatherhood been? It's been a challenge. It's definitely been a challenge to not make it about me. and what I want and what I want from my son, that I want him to behave, that I want him to comply to my directions, but to respond to his spirit. And how do I nurture and guide his spirit becoming all that it can be and not getting in his way?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a contrast.
Yes. It's so much listening. I feel like there's so much listening to parenting that I never anticipated. And I really appreciate that you brought up discipline, because I the same, like last couple of weeks, my son kept being like, I want to do Kung Fu. I want to do Taekwondo. I want to do, and we were in this dance of like, how do I discipline him? Especially because as the mom, that's not necessarily my strong suit. You know, I'm not comfortable. It's very draining for me energetically. And he kept asking me, Taekwondo, Mom, Taekwondo. So we had this kind of blow up where it was like we were both at each other. And my soul came through and said, Taekwondo. And I thought, okay. So I took him, we drove to the studio, we met the instructors. Jeddy, the shift immediately in my son, he was like standing taller. He was like committed. He was inspired. And I'm watching this unfold before my eyes and thinking to myself, gosh, Katie, you get to honor his wisdom. This spirit knows, just like my soul will know what's next. His spirit so knows where it's headed next. And in so many ways, he's so wise. And these children that are coming through now are just so clear about their purpose and their mission. And it's like, to hear you say that about fatherhood and to feel that so deeply is beautiful. Yeah.
And that circles right back to what we were saying before, is that these, like you said, these children, they have the same soul wisdom that we do. It's something we're born into this life with, is this internal wisdom. We don't have the tools and the mechanics to express that wisdom the same way that we do as adults. You know, we can put language to it, we can conceptualize it, we can reflect upon it deeply and meditate on it. And kids just don't have the ability to do that. To them, it's like, Mom, Taekwondo, or like, Mom, cheeseburger. You know, it's like they have a deep listening. But the cool part about that is there's not a lot of fluff to it. It's like, here is my truth. Here's where I am. Whereas a lot as adults, sometimes we get removed from this truth because we want to process and analyze it before we just say, you know, Taekwondo.
Well, they don't have the layers of years of stuff to move through, you know? It's true. It's so funny. It comes through super strong too. And it can be super, I mean, in my experience, super confronting. You know, he's dropped into this space now where, and I actually haven't shared this publicly yet, but he's dropped in this space now where he's like, I'm ready for a dad. And for me, that's a lot to hear, you know, because even my throat like starts like, you know, it's a lot to hear, because it's like, oh gosh, okay. That's a clear message. And how do I be with that? How am I going to dance with that?
How do you be with that? How do you be with that right now?
For me right now, it feels, I notice that between him and I, what my soul is asking for, it's so funny. I wish I could get it on film, but it's intangible. So even if we filmed it, I don't know, you'd be able to see it. But my soul will bubble up with something. And if I don't honor it, his soul will reflect it back to me. So I've had this bubbling up of like, it's time for you to step out of solo life, of life as the businesswoman. It's time to actually create a full life and be in partnership. And so I've heard this wisdom, and now his soul's reflecting it back to me and saying, I'm on board. And now I'm manifesting this alongside you. And it's been pretty interesting and really beautiful, really, really beautiful to see how the work that I've done on myself and the people like the men like you who have showed up and really been a living, walking, breathing example of what's possible for not just for men, but just for relationships, for depth, for intuitiveness, for strength, for discernment, like all of these qualities has been really magnificent, because I think so many of us in this field can hear, do the work on yourself, go inside, it's, you have the answers within you. And it's great to hear that. And now being in that space to actually see like, wow, it's here is really magnificent.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad that I asked you, because the way that you express your process is beautiful. It's your two souls that have, in my opinion, we make an agreement to spend time with the other, right? So when a child comes into this life, they're agreeing to be with the parents who created them, and to walk this life together. So your soul agreement, the contract you have between the two of you, is having a dialogue. And that's really cool the way you describe that. I had another possibility that came up and that emerged, and to me, it's a yes and conversation where yes, he's reflecting something back to you that your soul has been bubbling up with, that maybe you haven't really clung on to or been ready to take that leap. And also the definition of what he's asking for. He's saying, I'm ready for a dad, but remember, he's also a child. So he's saying, I want what I think a dad is, in my opinion. And I think that in the modern structure of family units, we have a mom and we have a dad, and then we have children. And I think in terms of a village, in terms of community, that there's the parents who usher life into this world. And then there's the other men and women of the tribe, of the village, who take care of the children of every child as though they're our own. We don't have these systems in place anymore where we have aunties and uncles who can help discipline the children, that can help nurture the children and mirror back to them their wisdom and their soul's gift. But when I hear Elijah asking for a dad, to me, he's just asking for that masculine presence.
Yes.
So that you don't have to be both. Because that's what single moms have to do, right? Is you have to be the mom, the dad, the disciplinarian, the cheerleader, every single thing. And it's a lot for two parents to handle, let alone one.
Yeah. It's a big dance. Yeah.
It's a huge dance.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And it's funny, and I'll like wrap it up with this, but I intentionally, and I shared this with you when we got together, like maybe a month and a half ago, was that one of my more exciting moments was actually introducing him to you and watching him experience you. And when we were with you, and he got to see your dance with Sitka and like all of these things, it was so beautiful because he talked about that experience for a few days after. Like, when are we going to see them again? I want to go, talk to Jeddy. I want to go. And so I feel like as I've exposed him to men who are a different flavor than what he's used to, or walk a different path, he's become more open, and like he's letting me know, like, I like that frequency. That's what inspires me. That's what I want more of. And there's been more men who have shown up since then, and I've gotten to watch them interact, and it's just been magnificent. And I feel like you're on point with that, of like, he's asking for more exposure to men, to the masculine, to that. Yeah.
And you're listening and you're responding. And it can look like bringing him all the way up to Santa Barbara to hang out with me and my family. It can look like bringing him to Taekwondo. I don't know if it's a male teacher that he has, but I imagine that it is, because that's the majority of the time in martial arts.
Yeah.
And other areas where, and this is where I think the dance between letting their wisdom speak and letting our parental side come into view, is you get to be the filter for, is this a good man? And your experience in your life and who you've become allows you to assess, this is a good man. And not even, is this a good man, but is this the type of man that I want my son to model himself from? Because he will. Every man that he exposed, every man that I experienced in my lifetime, I have modeled a part of myself from. I've taken from them what was useful, and I've let go of the things that weren't useful, and then you adapt it and make it your own. It's like one of my favorite Bruce Lee quotes. He says, take what is useful, let go of what isn't, and add what is specifically your own. That's all we do in life. And so he'll do that naturally, and you get to be the one that, it creates these opportunities for him to experience different men.
Yeah. So good. Oh my gosh. Thank you for asking me that question.
Yeah.
I feel like that opened up so much dialogue that the mamas and maybe the single fathers who watch can take some nuggets from.
For sure. Can I say one more thing about that? And this
Please,
is a little bit of my personal philosophy. The moment my son was born, not before he was born, but right after he was born, I felt a cellular shift in me. I'll never forget being in we had the type of birth where we tried birthing at home. We went through every stage and we ended up having a C-section. So we ended up in the hospital. And the moment that I saw my son for the first time, everything in me changed. It was like a flip of my DNA. Certain things got activated. Other things just disappeared. And in that moment, it was between he and I recognized I will do anything for this being in this world, anything to support this little being here, having what they need, having a good life. And it wasn't until we left the hospital days later, and then weeks later when we were starting to go out into the community and be around other families, that I recognized another part of my DNA that got activated was the sense that I feel like I'm a father to all children. It's kind of weird to say that, and a lot of people, some parents, I say that and they're like, I know what you're talking about, where you can just be on the playground and you feel responsible for every child there. And I don't know if every parent feels that way or every parent takes that on, but I really do take that on because it's part of my message to humanity. Is it's all about the kids. It's all about what we're providing for these children. And in these moments where we have an opportunity to present ourselves fully to these children. Did you lose me for a second there?
We could hear you. The screen froze, but now you're back. So it's good.
Oh, but now I'm back. Okay.
Yeah.
So every opportunity I have to engage with a little being, I'm showing up as though I'm not their parent, but like I'm their uncle.
Yeah.
And that we all have an opportunity to do that. And if we all take responsibility and ownership for every child we see, then the world is going to become a different place. If we're taking responsibility for every child in this next generation, and the things that happen, like these school shootings, these renegade kids that do terrible things, and it's all because they don't feel like they actually belong, that anyone actually really cares. And we don't need to depend on the parents to be the ones who care for that child. We can all do that. We can all care enough to invest in every child equally.
Yeah.
So
yes.
That felt like something I really wanted to say to tie all that together.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeddy.
Yeah, you got it.
For all of your wisdom and for your journey, for walking the journey, showing up, for creating your programs for men, and for your heart. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for what you're doing here. I really enjoyed this conversation. I was telling you before we jumped on, it's been kind of a turbulent couple of days. I've been emotionally, energetically, it's just been like ups and downs. And this is good medicine for my heart. I feel uplifted after this conversation. So thank you.
Amazing. So good. I do too. My heart's like exploding. I just so grateful and excited for people to experience you. So do you feel complete at this point?
Yeah, I do. Aside from just acknowledging you for the work that you're doing in the world and for stepping boldly forward into your medicine. Also to be, because I witness you and I experience you as a really powerful and a really committed mother. And I know I love my wife, and I think she's an amazing mother, and it's great that we have the support system together. I just don't know how single moms do it out there. So I really honor you and all the single mothers out there for what you're doing and how much commitment you have to your children, even if it's not pretty all the time.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. That brought me tears. Oh my gosh. Yes. Thank you so much, Jeddy. I love you and grateful.
Love you too. Thank you, sister.